Carla is a record-breaking ultra runner, adventurer and running coach. So numerous accolades that she does hold include a gold medal at the Comrades Marathon, which is the oldest and the longest ultra marathon in the world, down in South Africa. She represents Great Britain at the 100-kilometer World Championships, a ridiculous distance, and is also recently the world record holder now for running the length of Great Britain, so Land's End to John O'Groats, in 12 days, just over 12 days. So a number of those achievements that I've just mentioned there are really hard to comprehend, and so I've had a little think over the weekend, Jed, thank you, about putting those into comparison. So the cross country at the beginning of the year was about 4 kilometers. So work that out to be that you're running the cross country 22 times in a 24-hour period, little breaks within that, but then repeating that for 12 days. So it's an incredible achievement. We've got Carla, so you're going to ask Carla any questions to begin with. She's going to then do her presentation. Obviously, you may have your lunch, so those on the live stream will then have some time to ask Carla some questions as well. Another comparison of the Land's End John O'Groats achievement. It's from here to Paris and back, and then back to Paris in that 12-hour period, and that's all on 2 feet, all running. Obviously, with Paris, you've got a bit of water in between, but a great achievement, and we'd really like to welcome Carla to speak to everyone. We'll start off with any questions, and hopefully, as year 12s and the most senior at the school at the moment, you may have some questions. So hands up if you do have a question. Yes, Charlie. 100 meters on.
100 meters, probably about 14 seconds.
So that was 100 meter time with 14 seconds. Yes, Archer.
You're not famous.
I'm not famous. Maybe with ultra runners.
So I've got a question to go with. How did you get into running?
So I actually started running. I started running when I was at school. Like some of you probably got tricked into doing cross country. And from there, it just kind of, I did a little bit further, a little bit more running every year. And then it kind of spiraled out of control where I ended up running up a country.
And the inspiration behind the record-breaking attempt?
So there was a lady called Mimi Anderson who has done lots of ultra running, and I read her book about 5 years ago and thought she was completely mental, as she spoke about doing this run from Land's End to John O'Groats. But it clearly planted a little seed into my head, and I kept on thinking back to her doing the story and just thinking that it sounded like an amazing thing to do. And it got to this year when I thought I might be able to do it myself. So she kind of inspired me to give it a go. In the beginning, I thought I would never go anywhere near it, but our brains change, which is nice.
Tom. So the question was there, how long did it take Carla to train for the attempt?
So I actually only decided to do it at the beginning of lockdown. So I just had 3 months to get ready, but I've been running for 20 years. So it's probably all of that experience over quite a long time that got me ready to do this one.
And what does your training week look like? What does an average week look like for you in terms of your training?
Yeah, normally I would do like an interval session on a Tuesday and a Thursday where I'll go and do sprints or hill reps. And then a couple of days, just a nice, easy half an hour, 45-minute jog. And then on the weekend, pretty much run all day.
Any other questions? Yeah.
When you're running, do you listen to music or what keeps you going?
No, I don't actually listen to anything when I run. Yeah.
Sorry, that was, does Carla listen to music while she's running?
So no, I don't actually listen to anything when I run. I feel like I kind of lose myself in my thoughts. I think about random things in the day, or the squirrel that's just run across in front of me. And I quite enjoy just, listening to what's going on around me, those kind of songs.
And in terms of nutrition for your attempt, so you may get onto it later on, but in terms of your training and things, what do you say was really important in terms of your nutrition?
So the biggest thing with nutrition was like teaching your body how to run and eat at the same time. I'm sure some of you have tried to eat sandwich and go and do some sport. It's not very nice, but you can actually train your body to be able to keep on moving and eating at the same time. So that was the biggest thing that I had to learn before doing this run.
Well, you touched on it slightly, but in terms of your mental health, is there anything that you've sort of seen through your running that's changed with your mental health, or any benefits that you may have seen at all?
Oh yeah, running, if I ever get stressed or I can't figure out how to do something, if I'm like doing work and trying to figure out a problem, I find if I just step away from it, go for a little run, it clears my head. And often, like what I've been trying to problem solve at home, I can think about the answer when I'm running, just because it gives you that clarity. So yeah, I really enjoy that part of it. And yeah, I think running, just being outside and getting fresh air and sunshine is so good for you. Yeah, there's huge benefits, and that definitely helps keep me sane.
Yep.
How did you know what route to get someone like cycling, where to go?
So I actually plotted the whole route using this website called OS Maps. It's an Ordnance Survey mapping system. And then I downloaded all of those routes onto a little bike computer. And then there was a cyclist with me for the whole run who would tell me where to go, left or right. And a couple of times they got a bit distracted because they were having a chat on the phone to their friend, and they're like, oh no, we've gone the wrong way, which I tried not to get a little bit upset about.
Adding a few kilometres into it. Any more questions at all? No, we'll start off with the presentation, if that's okay.
Cool.
And we'll go from there.
Yes. So, as the world went into lockdown in March earlier this year, I was actually out in South Africa at the time. And in South Africa, the rules were a little bit stricter, and we weren't actually allowed to leave our houses at all to do any exercise or go for a walk or get our hour a day of freedom. So I was subjected to running up and down my driveway. So where I lived here, there were 6 houses at the end of the driveway there. So I went and asked my neighbours if they would mind if I ran up and down it all day. They thought I was a little bit mental, but told me to crack on. So I had 100 metres out and back, and it was actually quite steep. This is actually a bit of a hill. And I would just run up and down that each day, mainly because I didn't want to be stuck inside all day, and I needed to get some fresh air. And I also really like eating cake, and I wasn't willing to give up cake. So I was like, I'll stick to my driveway. And as I was running up and down the driveway, I started to think about things that I could do, because all of a sudden, all of my races for the year were cancelled. It was like the calendar was in front of me and everything just started to disappear. I run for a women's running team called Team Massmart, and I normally have to do certain races for them throughout the year. And as these had all disappeared, for me, it just showed that there was a huge opportunity that I could actually use all this free time to do something really cool and plan a bit of an adventure. So I started to have a little bit of a think about what I could do. I have maps on my walls at home because I'm a bit of a geek and I quite like maps. And I don't know why, but the Great Britain just kept on jumping out at me. And I started to look at Le Jog, which is Land's End to John O'Groats. It's 874 miles from the very bottom of the UK all the way to the top of Scotland. And if you do it the other way around, it's called Joggle. You go through 3 countries, England, Wales and Scotland, and there's about 4,000 people that do it every year in all different shapes and forms. They run, cycle, skateboard. There's a couple of guys who have even done it on a unicycle, which is pretty impressive. And this just kind of sat in the back of my head. And as I was running up and down the driveway, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to give it a bash. And I didn't want to just try and complete it. I wanted to give myself a bit more of a challenge. So I decided to actually try and go for the Guinness World Record. So Guinness have different records all over the world for different things, like you'll know, like Usain Bolt, 100-meter world record holder, to 5,000 meters, and actually Le Jog is one of their records as well. So I started to get in touch with people, the lady who actually held the record, other guys that had attempted it, and I started to ask them for bits of advice. The main theme with all of them and with my friends and family were that you need at least 2 years to plan something like this. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot of teamwork to get something like this off the ground. But I had this little burning in the back of my head that, why do I need to take 2 years? I know what I need to do. I know the things that I need to plan. So I started to make a list, and I decided that actually I wasn't going to give myself 2 years to get to the start line. I was going to give myself 3 months. So I started to brainstorm about the jog and started to get all the planning ready. So I made a training plan for myself. I plotted out the next 3 months, and I decided how I was going to increase my running every day. So I started off with doing a 15K run on a Friday, a Saturday, a Sunday, and a Monday. And every week I added 5 kilometers on until I got to 50 kilometers. So I was doing 50K a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, which was a little bit scary because it wasn't even halfway to the distances I was going to have to run, but that's fine. I then started to plan the route. So like I said, I used the OS mapping tool. I basically straight lined the shortest possible distance between here and John O'Groats, and then went through on the map. You can like drag it to the roads to figure out actually where I would run each day. Got the grid references for the start locations, the end locations, and basically I just divided the total distance by 12. There was nothing more technical to figuring it out than purely that. I had to find a support team. I've done a lot of multi-day running before on my own, but for something like this, I needed a huge team to help me. So I had to get people to look after the Guinness World Record stuff, to help resupply me with food, to drive the motorhomes that we were going to be driving, to do physiotherapy, sports massage, to ride a bike with me to help me navigate. So I had to try and find all these people. But one of the positives that came out of COVID was that everyone wasn't working. So a lot of my friends and family who helped me with this, they all had spare time. And because I was asking them to give up 2 weeks for me, it just all fitted in and they were able to do that. I had to find some sponsors to help me with the project. So I made a sponsorship proposal, which basically said what I was going to do, who my support team were, and what I would give to my sponsors in return. So this was things like put their logo on my kit, on the vehicles, and write nice things about them. I probably wrote to about 400 different companies, like different kit, like sports companies, tech companies, businesses, and I probably had about 10 people reply to me. So with any projects like this, you just have to keep on writing and keep on putting yourself out there. Most people will say no, but the ones that said yes ended up being absolutely amazing. I ended up getting Hoka sponsoring me with running shoes and kit. I now look like I own a sports shop. My bedroom, I've got trainers piled up to here, which is a bit ridiculous. Garmin gave me a watch and a tracking device for the bike that we could use to navigate. And Noon and Cliff gave me sports drink and fuel for the whole of the project. And the other guys helped with hotels and a bit of financial sponsorship along the way. So if any of you ever plan anything like this and think that no one's ever going to get back to you, you just got to keep on putting yourself out there because eventually someone will say yes and help you out. I made spreadsheets. I had spreadsheets on budget, on what to eat, when to eat, what the crew were going to do, what their rotas were, what kit I needed, what equipment I needed. It was just ridiculous. And I was like, why am I making all these spreadsheets when all I want to do is run? But you have to put all this planning in because when I got started, I knew what I was doing, but I had to make sure that all my team knew the plan as well. And then I had to figure out the Guinness rules. So Guinness are really strict in terms of getting a world record and what you need to do. So I had to have witnesses every single day that weren't connected to the project at all. So we had to ask like Barbara standing at the bus stop if she wouldn't mind signing the book to say that she saw me running past. We had to drag people out of their houses to help sign our book. People that came and ran along with me documented that they ran with me. We had to take photos along the whole route. We had to have 10 minutes of video every single day. We had to have a tracker. So my watch was used as a GPS recording device, and I also had a spare tracker on my back, which would ping every 3 minutes. So Guinness could see where you were to make sure that you weren't cheating, because annoyingly, people do cheat on things like this. I don't know why you would put yourself through this pain. But there was a guy a couple of years ago who tried to run across America and just sat on the back of his vehicle, and they just drove at like 5 miles an hour. So all of this was in place, and then it got to the 16th of July, where I ended up getting to the start line down at Land's End. So this is a little bit scary. I didn't quite know what was going to happen over the next few days. I picked the 16th of July because I wanted to finish 12 days later on the 27th of July, which was my birthday, because I thought that would be a really nice birthday present. Turns out it was a very painful birthday present. And this is the moment just as I got started. So that was the moment where I set off on this adventure, not really knowing what was going to come next. And it turns out about 10 kilometers down the road would start to be the start of this crazy adventure where there was 2 fish lying in a little lay-by. I have no idea who put those fish there, but they were just lying on the side of the road. And that wouldn't be the last crazy thing I saw. I also saw at one point near Preston a man walking his 2 pet turtles down the road, which was a bit bizarre. And I was like, am I hallucinating? But luckily I had a cyclist with me to confirm that I wasn't. Our daily routine. So every day I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The crew would actually have to get up before me at about 3:30 to get breakfast ready. I would then have porridge for breakfast. They would give me a quick massage, try and stretch my legs out and get them moving again. And then we would start the day at 5 a.m. And basically I would keep on running every day until 10 o'clock at night. So it was 17 hours of running a day. And through that, every 30 minutes I would eat food. And every 10 minutes I would have something to drink. And I just used a little alarm on my watch that just said eat and drink, and it just beeped every 30 minutes and every 10 minutes throughout the day. And I ended up eating the equivalent of 30 hamburgers every single day, which you may think sounds like fun, but actually in reality, it's not. Eating every day, like all day, every day, is really boring. And also by about day 8, as well as my legs hurting, I ended up with ulcers all over my tongue, which is really attractive, and also really painful, especially when one of the crew decided to give me a handful of tomatoes, which I thought would be really delicious, but because they're so acidic, I nearly ended up crying from eating tomatoes. I would eat basically everything and anything throughout the day. If you think of like an Iceland buffet, like sausage rolls, mini sausages, pancakes, crisps, fruit, yogurt, anything that you can possibly think of. And it would normally get to the end of the day where the crew, like my sister in particular, who was helping me, would be like, oh, here's some pancakes. And I'm like, I don't want pancakes. She's like, okay, here's some sausages. I'm like, I don't want sausages. You just don't want to eat, but they've just got to force you to eat and keep on going. As you can imagine, it was a little bit painful. Basically, from lunchtime on day 1, which was about 60 kilometers into the day, after about 8 hours of running, every single step hurt. It was painful right from the beginning, and it didn't stop probably until finished. And this was me getting a massage, which everyone was like, oh, you're getting like 3 massages a day. That's amazing. No, it wasn't. It was like someone was sticking knives into my legs. And then on top of that, my feet started to swell. This normally happens when you do multi-day projects, and we knew it was going to happen. But something a little bit different happened that we didn't expect. So I actually ended up getting blisters underneath my toenails and had to drill through my toenails. So yeah, sorry about that. So, who wants to be an ultra runner?
Okay. Yes, well.
So the doctor told me that I was going to have to do this and that would make me feel a lot better. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And then eventually my toes got so sore that I was like, okay, fine, give me the needle. And I did it. And it was actually the nicest feeling in the world, because then it was one less thing that hurt. And that pain was made all worthwhile when you ended up with people like this on the side of the road. So I have no idea who this guy is, but he ended up following me for about 7 hours just with his kettlebell, just popping out of bushes, ringing his kettlebell and cheering at me when I was in like a raging mood at like points in the day. I was so tired and I was so exhausted, and he just kept making me laugh from the little bushes that he was popping out of with his kettlebell. And then it got to this one point in the run where I'm running down the road and I see this lady in the blue top standing in the lay-by, and I was like, oh my God, that's Sharon. So Sharon is the previous world record holder, and she's just watching me as I like run past her, and I felt so intimidated. I was like, I feel really bad. I'm trying to steal her record. She's come out here and is just watching me run past. And then we got to this point where I was having a little massage, and she came and said hello. She also gave me this massive cake, and she's like, oh, don't worry, there might be some arsenic in there. And then started laughing. I was like, so I'm only joking. And I was like, hide the cake. So I didn't eat the cake, but it was very sweet of her to come all the way with me. And she also ended up running about 10 kilometers with me that day. One thing that I found a little bit hard, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's a lot of people that have started to do all these virtual races and runs. And I had a couple of people join me along the route, and they were like, oh, I'm also doing the jog. I'm doing 1 mile a day for the next 5 years. I'm like, okay, cool. It's not quite the same, but thanks. And then when Sharon joined me, I had 2 other guys, Andy and Adam, and also another lady called Angela, who's actually the oldest record holder. She's 66 and completed this in about 17 days last year, which is seriously impressive. When they came and ran with me, it was absolutely amazing because they actually knew the pain that I was going through and what I was experiencing, and being able to share that with someone who had been in my shoes a couple of years before was pretty special. And then this is a moment running over the Lake District up a hill called Shat.
It's hard, man. It's like not even fun. Like other stuff I've done. Well, it's fun seeing you guys, but on my eye, like it's, you know, other things you do, there's like bits of fun. This is just a grizz.
So yeah, I've done lots of different runs before, and they have always been fun. And this, because there was a record involved and we were trying to keep to such a strict time schedule, I had my friends come and visit me, my family come and visit me, and unless they were running with me, I couldn't stop to say hello. Like, there was not time. So it was like, you want to chat, you've got to come and run. And it did take that element of fun out of it for me. And when I was doing it, I would go through this really bad patch every day. It tended to happen in the afternoon, and I just didn't want to talk to anyone. I was like, all I want to do is run, just leave me alone. And then in the first couple of days, I ended up getting people coming and running with me. And they're like, oh, do your legs hurt? I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you tired? I'm like, yeah. And I would just get really annoyed with them. And I'd feel really bad because especially I had 3 runners that had driven all the way from Swansea. So they'd driven like 2 hours to come and see me run. And I was just in this raging mood because I was tired and sore and emotional. So after that day, we said to everyone, if you want to come and join me, please come in the day before 5 p.m. And then I could have my little moment in the afternoon of sulking on my own, away from any other people. And as soon as we started to do that, it was so nice because all of a sudden there was this pressure released from me where I didn't have to engage with people when I was finding it really tough. And it also got to, so I cried every day. It would get to a point at the end of the day where I felt this like just massive emotion just building up on me. I would then just burst into tears, cry for about 2 minutes, and then I'd be fine. I was like, okay, cool, I'm good to go again. So for me, like having that cry, letting all that emotion out was a nice way just to release everything that I'd felt that day on the run. They got to points where my legs just stopped working and I had to lie on the floor in the forest and try and get, this is Andrea, my sister, and Andy, our doctor, to try and stretch my legs out. And it was at this point that the crew said to me, oh, we really think you need to take 12 hours off to have a bit of a break. And I'm like, why? They're like, because you're tired. I'm like, yeah. They're like, and your legs are sore. I'm like, yep. But before this started, I knew if I was going to have to run, so I was running the equivalent of 3 marathons a day, it was going to hurt, it was going to be emotional, and I was going to be in a world of pain. But I fully accepted that that's what I was throwing myself into. And for me, I'm like, if I stop for 12 hours, I'm going to have to push on through this pain for an extra 12 hours at the end. I'm like, I would rather just get it done. So in my head, I'm like, unless I physically cannot keep on going, I am going to go until I reach that lamppost in John O'Groats and not take any extra rest because for me it just wasn't necessary. When we got to this point in Scotland, everyone that was with me was so excited. They're like, oh, this is amazing. We're in Scotland, we're on the home leg. And if you look at the map, Scotland is really, really big. And we got to the border and I still had a third of the way to go and about 5 days to push. So where everyone else was cheering that we were in the final country, I just couldn't let myself celebrate. I knew that we were now kind of in the business end of things. And if things were going to start going wrong, this is when it was going to happen. So whilst everyone else was celebrating, I kind of didn't let myself, and I probably didn't let myself until we got near the end. And this is the reality. About 5 kilometres into Scotland, it actually started to pour with rain, and I ended up in this lovely bus stop trying to get the guys to help me get my legs moving again. That's the glamorous side of it. After about day 9, I started to get this really bad pain in the bottom of my shin, and we thought it was the tendon in my leg, and I was starting to get tendonitis, which you get when you do too much of something. So it's an overuse injury. And so Dave, this guy here, who was a cyclist and also one of the sports masseuses, started to massage my leg and started to try and fix it. Our doctor, Andy, ended up taking a picture of my leg and sent it to some of his doctor friends, and we were all trying to figure out what was actually wrong. And it turned out that it wasn't the tendon in my leg. I actually ended up getting a skin infection called cellulitis. So I ended up getting this skin infection, but where we had taped up the leg because we thought it was tendonitis, it made me run funny and then made my hamstrings hurt, which made me run funny, which made my quads hurt. So it's a bit of this chain reaction. But when Andy said to me, one of my friends that I've sent the picture to of your shin has said she's another doctor and an ultra runner, and she's seen this before in 2 other ultra runners, and that it is this skin infection, cellulitis, and we need to get you on antibiotics as quickly as possible. Otherwise, your run is never going to happen, and we're going to have to probably stop in a day. And I was a bit nervous about taking antibiotics and drugs because I knew my body was under so much stress already. I didn't really want to stress it anymore. But they kind of told me that this was the only way I was going to reach the end. And this kind of made me realize how important it is not to just have an awesome team around you, but have a team that is able to think on their feet and spread it out wider, because if they don't know the answer, someone else might. And in this case, it was Andy's friend who ended up seeing something that she had seen before, and it was a bit of a stroke of luck that she told Andy to get me on some antibiotics and start to get my leg fixed. As well as all the bad things and putting needles through my toes and everything hurting, there were some awesome points, and this was one of them. So this is running up and over the Pentland Hills in Edinburgh, and it was the first time that I was running off-road, and it was absolutely amazing. This was the view at the top, and it was the first time in the whole run, and actually the only time that would happen, that there would be no cars and no other people, and just me and my cyclist, Dave, going up and over these hills. And it was like, I don't know if you can see it in the picture, but it's this marshland, and it felt like I was running on marshmallows. Like my feet were just sinking into the ground, my legs didn't hurt, and it was 10 kilometers. I was probably up there for about an hour and a half of just absolute bliss, where I didn't have to worry about anything. The guys were all really worried about me getting up here, thinking I was going to freak out because my ankles would be rolling. But because of this ground being so spongy, it was so easy to run. And if I could have just stayed up there all day, I wouldn't. But unfortunately, we had to keep on going. So this is my birthday. I woke up on the 27th of July. And we were due to finish at 11 o'clock that evening. I had 110 kilometers to go. But like every adventure, it doesn't always go to plan. And yeah. As you can see, I wasn't very happy about it. My whole body started to shut down, and one of the reasons we chose to go from south to north through the UK is the prevailing winds in the UK normally go like this up the coast. What had happened on the last day was a northerly storm ended up coming in. This was the beginning of the storm, and it started to rain at about lunchtime on the 27th of July, and the weather just got worse and worse and worse. It got to a point where we're walking down the road, everyone is miserable, Scouse on the bike is soaking wet. That's my brother with me in his hoodie, he's like drenched to the bone. I was trying to change my kit to try and keep as dry as possible, because I don't know if you guys have spent too long in a swimming pool and your fingers go all crinkly and white. That also happens to your feet when you're running, and if you let it get too bad, you can end up getting blisters and having almost like your feet start to crumble away. So we were trying not to let that happen. And because of that, I was having to change all my kit all the time. My gloves ended up getting so soaked that I'm actually wearing socks in my hands. And by about 12 o'clock that night, I had no more dry gloves or socks to wear, or clean socks to wear, that they started to give me my old socks, which I didn't know until I was like wiping my face. I was like, you are horrible people. I think that was them getting revenge at me, giving me horrible old socks to wear on my hands. And it got to a point at about 11 o'clock at night. I was meant to be finished, and I still had about 50 kilometers to go. Because of the weather, because of the infection in my shin, which had now gone to my quad and meant that I actually couldn't lift my leg off the floor, we were having to walk. And I just got into our van and just started crying because I was so cold. I had no idea how I was going to warm my body up to keep on going. And then we found this silver blanket. I don't know if you've seen them. They normally wrap them around people at the end of a marathon. We found one of these in the van, and the guys wrapped it around me and then taped it together with bits of duct tape. And within 2 minutes, I was warm again. And I didn't realize how amazing these things were. So if any of you cycle or run or go on adventures and go hiking, take one of these with you, because this is what kept me going all through the night. because as soon as I put this on, I knew that I could carry on going. And I had decided at this point that I wasn't going to stop until I reached that lamppost at John O'Groats. So for me, I was going to keep on going all through the night, much to the delight of all my team. They weren't going to get any sleep. But I just couldn't face going to sleep for one more night and having to wake up for another day. I just wanted to get this over and done with. But this is what the weather had been like. So this is the wind. It was raging normally. It was about 30 miles an hour. And then we would get gusts of 60 to 90 miles an hour, which were just blowing me off the road. And having to like forge my way forward through this wind was quite emotional. And I was becoming so tired because we had kept on moving for, at this point, probably 22 hours, that I was actually falling asleep walking down the road. So I was like walking down the road, I was falling asleep on my feet. I had to jump in the van to have a 5-minute nap. I fell asleep and I then just turned to my sister and said, "Is that 5 minutes?" She's like, "It's 45 seconds. Like, calm down." So went back to sleep. And it was that feeling of, you know, when your phone's about to die and you plug a charger into it and it gives it a little bit of a boost so you can keep on using that little bit longer. That's what I felt like with that little 5-minute nap. It just gave me enough energy to keep on going towards that finish line. In my head, I'd envisaged myself like Usain Bolt at the 100-meter final at the Olympics, running in and touching the pole. It didn't quite work out like that. Yeah, it was a bit more of an emotional waddle in to touch that pole, but the feeling of finishing and getting to that finish line was absolutely incredible. So this was me. My parents ended up coming all the way up to Scotland to see me finish, and as I finished, my mum was like, "Well, at least that wasn't a waste of time." I was like, "Thanks, Mum." But I ended up finishing in 12 days, 30 minutes and 14 seconds. I broke the world record by 10 hours and 36 minutes. I ran 1,374 kilometers and took over 1.8 million steps on the way to get there. Burnt 96,000 calories and ate about 360 burgers along the way. And so far, I've lost 3 toenails. So I'm sure there's more to come. That's what I looked like as soon as I finished. But looking like that, it was completely worth it when a couple of weeks later, I ended up getting my certificate in the post to tell me that I'd broken the world record. And I have no idea why, but it wasn't until I'd actually got the certificate that I felt like I'd done it. I mean, my legs felt like someone had come and hit me with a bat, but until I had this proof, it didn't quite feel real. And then I said this about halfway through the run.
I'm never doing this again. You need to remind me. If I tell you I want to do this again, I'm never doing it again.
So I said I was never going to do it again, but about 2 weeks ago, I've got asked if I want to go and do it again as part of a relay team. So hopefully, fingers crossed, in December, we're going to try and break the team world record going from Land's End to John O'Groats. And for me, it's like one of my mottos is to say yes to any opportunity that you're given. Luckily, they asked me long enough afterwards that I've forgotten all of the pain. And I'm hoping that this relay attempt is going to be a little bit more fun than me dragging myself from Land's End to John O'Groats on my own. And yeah, I just think doing stuff like this, throwing yourself in at the deep end, when people tell you you can't do something, like everyone told me there is no way I could do this for 3 months planning, but I did. People told me that, you know, you can't possibly run that far every day, but you can, as long as you know, as long as you're happy to embrace the pain and accept that it's going to be a little bit difficult and it's going to hurt, but the bonus that you get from completing something like this, and no one can take my certificate away from me, even if someone goes and beats me in the future, I'm always going to have that certificate for myself to keep, which is quite special. So a little challenge for all of you guys. If you're thinking about going on an adventure, this is quite a fun one to do. It's called the Street Name Challenge. I went and did this last week. You basically have to spell your name, so that's mine, C-A-R-L-A, using streets that are around your house. There's a few rules. You can only go and do it under human power. So you can walk, you can hike, you can ride a bike, you can go on a skateboard, but you can't use anything that has an engine. You can't cheat and Google roads beginning with A. You can look on a map, but then you have to get there by yourself, and you can take as long as you want. But this was quite fun when I did it, because I went down roads that I didn't even know existed near me. It got a little bit frustrating when I couldn't find the second road beginning with A, but they do pop up. And yeah, you can use your first name, your middle name, your surname, or all of them. But yeah, just get out there and start exploring. And if any of you guys want to plan an adventure or go and do something like this, then go and do it. Like, ask people that have done it before to give you help and advice. You'll be amazed at the time that people are willing to give up to help you on your journey. But doing stuff like this, going through the pain, putting needles through your toes is completely worth it, even if you lose them in the end. Does anyone have any questions?
We're going to go to some questions that are in the room at the moment, but if you do have any questions, if you're in a remote room, just put them through onto the chat and we'll hopefully get those asked as well. Okay, Charlie, did Carla lose any weight during the attempt?
So I actually only lost 2 kilos, which I was pretty happy with. And I think that's because I was eating so much. I ate every 30 minutes throughout the day. So yeah, only a tiny bit.
Any other questions in the room? We had a question from a parent, which I'm going to read out. What would you say was the most important change you would make to your training when going from a half marathon or marathon distance to ultra distance events?
So probably from going from a half marathon to an ultra is getting your body used to fueling. So that's the biggest difference, because you're going for so much longer. You do need to be able to eat and drink. And as well as increasing the distance slowly, yeah, if you can nail eating and drinking, you'll nail an ultra.
And it's incredible to hear about the story and the world record attempt from Carla. And any further questions that anyone does have? Would you have any advice for students at the moment, of people going through school at the moment, other than just give it a go, say yes, and any further advice?
Yeah, just if you guys are doing a sport or something like that, I think just keep on going. Like for me, I did sport from when I started at school, and I always had in the back of my mind that I really, really wanted to get a Great Britain vest. But as I was going up the distances, I wasn't quite good enough to represent Great Britain at 800 or 1500, because I just wasn't that fast. But I kept on training. I kept on going and doing races and racing other girls throughout the UK, and also, you know, throwing myself into races in other countries. And it was because I went and did this one race in South Africa, I ended up doing quite well, and I got my first Great British vest for a senior international when I was 34. So, you know, it's not a young person's game, and you have got so much time that even if at the moment you're not that keen on running or doing a sport, like, just keep it in the back of your head, because you can achieve amazing things, and there's no cap on how old you have to be good at sport and achieve your goals. So if any of you do want to get an international vest, you know, you have got so much time, and enjoy the process getting there.
There's a question.
Got a question through from one of the rooms. Were there any other points where you thought you might want to give up? And if so, what motivated you to keep going?
So yeah, I've had a few people ask me this, and actually there was never a point that I wanted to give up, and there was never a point that I wanted to stop. There was points where it was really hard, but I think because in my head I'd set myself this challenge, there was a world record that I was going to try and get. I'd asked friends and family to give up time to help me. People had donated money to help me do this. Companies had given me support in terms of running shoes and kit and equipment, that giving up wasn't really an option. And I think the fact that I had such a big goal is what kept me moving forward, and all those days and times when it did get a bit emotional and hurt.
You mentioned you obviously got the team relay coming up as well. Do you see yourself ever not having those challenges moving forward? Do you, once you've done this challenge now, is it just a case of building up again and going again? Yeah,
what I find amazing is, like, in your head, when I first started running, I was like, someone was like, are you going to do a marathon? I was like, no, you're mental. Like, that is way too far. But then you start training and you do a half marathon, and then you do a marathon, and through all of these challenges that I've done, I've realized that I can push my mind and my body a tiny little bit further. And I'd done a run similar to this a couple of years ago in South Africa, where we tried to do 90 kilometers a day. I got injured, and I only, after 6 days, we had to stop running and just had to see how far we could get within that 6 days. And at that point, I was like, there is no way I can run 90 kilometers day in, day out. But once I stepped away from that project and reflected on it, I was like, actually, with the right team around me, I can. So I learned from that project to this one, to know that you have to have a good support team around you. You have to have a doctor. You have to have a physio, because those are the guys that are going to keep you on the road. And I read another book about someone that ran across America, which again, I thought was completely ridiculous. But by doing this project, I now know that I'm more than capable of going and running across America. It's just going to be 45 days of pain and not 12. So that's on my list. Anyone want to come?
Okay, unless there's any other questions in the room. Okay, and we're going to let the year 12s go to lunch in a second. Wait there. But just for those that missed it at the beginning, for comparison of what Carla's done, an incredible distance, but to put that into a shiplet comparison, it was 332 times around the cross-country route that you did at the beginning of term. So it worked out to be about 24 of those each day for 12 days. It's absolutely incredible. And we've got one more question in the room.
What's your 5K time?
I actually did a 5K race yesterday where I did 18:59. Which I was pretty happy with, considering during this I was going a lot slower.
But a massive thank you to Carla, and a round of applause.